There's a question I believe almost every person asks themselves at some point, sometimes in a whisper, sometimes in quiet frustration. Why do I keep stopping? You start with energy. The vision is alive. You're filled with that wonderful fire, inspiration, clarity, desire. And then somewhere along the path, something stalls. The energy fades, the noise of life takes over. You stop, you drift, you forget what lit you up in the first place. And you wonder, what's wrong with me? Let me gently tell you, there's nothing wrong with you. You've simply been taught to rely on the wrong kind of fuel. The world talks endlessly about motivation, but most of what it offers is shallow, a quick shot of adrenaline, a bold quote on a pretty background, a short-lived burst of emotion that fizzles out just as fast as it came. That kind of motivation can get you started, but it will never carry you through the valley. It will not survive your pain. It will not hold you when things go quiet, when the applause dies down, when no one is watching. You were not made to live off sparks. You were made to live off something deeper, something unshakable, eternal, anchored not in the mood of the moment, but in the depth of your purpose. That's the great secret the world forgets to tell you. The truly unstoppable ones are not the loudest or the most energized. They are the most anchored. And that anchor is not hype, it is hope. When you believe that your life was created for something meaningful, when you believe that your existence is not random but purposeful, then you stop asking how to stay excited and start asking how to stay aligned. You no longer chase the next burst of energy. You return again and again to the quiet place of intention, the still place where your soul remembers who you are and why you're here. I've seen people who had no credentials, no great talent, no connections, and yet they rose. They became forces of change. They built families, companies, legacies, not because they were always motivated, but because they were convinced. And conviction doesn't need a crowd. It doesn't need noise. It just needs truth. So if you've been starting and stopping, doubting and delaying, I invite you not to push harder, but to go deeper. Ask not what can excite you, ask what will sustain you. And in that sacred place of purpose, you will begin to feel something stir, not fire that burns out, but a flame that endures, quiet, consistent, steady. That is where the journey toward becoming unstoppable truly begins. To be unstoppable does not mean to be loud, forceful, or constantly driven by energy. It's not about showing off your strength, nor is it about pushing your way through life with clenched fists and grit in your teeth. No real strength, the kind that lasts, is rarely loud. Being unstoppable means that you keep moving forward, quietly, faithfully, no matter what stands in front of you. You're not controlled by how you feel, or by what others say, or by how long the road may seem. You are guided by something deeper, a compass inside you that always points to your purpose. I have seen this kind of strength. I have witnessed it in people who had every reason to quit, but chose instead to keep going, not for applause, not for success, but because they had made a decision to keep showing up. That is the true meaning of being unstoppable, not rushing through life at a breakneck pace, but choosing every single day to walk with calm determination, even if it's slow, even if it's uphill, even if you're the only one walking. There is a quiet power in the person who no longer needs to prove themselves, a deep, holy kind of confidence that says, I don't need the world to see my progress, I just need to stay true to my path. That person is not moved by flattery nor crushed by criticism. They have grown beyond the need for validation. They are grounded. You can feel it when you're near someone like that. They are calm in the storm. They do not panic. They are not in a hurry. They are not distracted by shiny things or shaken by uncertainty. They've made peace with who they are and what they're here to do, and that peace is their power. Now here's the truth most people don't realize until much later. You don't become unstoppable by pushing harder. You become unstoppable by becoming clearer. When you know who you are and why you're here, you start moving with a quiet kind of fire, one that doesn't need to roar, but never goes out. You don't have to chase greatness when you walk in purpose. You don't have to be impressive when you're being authentic. You don't have to keep proving yourself when you're already aligned with something eternal. That is the path of the unstoppable, not driven by ego, but by vision. Not desperate for attention, but faithful to the call. And that kind of life, it never burns out. It only gets brighter with time. There is a great tragedy I've witnessed over and over again in people's lives, and it is not failure nor poverty, nor the absence of opportunity. It is this: they never discovered what was already inside them. They walk through life quietly burdened with a belief that they are limited, that they are too ordinary, too flawed, too late. And yet every person I have ever seen rise above those lies, truly rise, did so not because something new was given to them, but because something buried within them finally woke up. You were not sent into this world empty. You were not born by accident or left without tools. You carry within you a will, a spirit, a mind, all designed by something far greater than circumstance. And once you begin to awaken to this truth, you'll understand that becoming unstoppable isn't about gaining more. It's about uncovering what you already have. There is a quiet strength inside of you that can endure more than you believe. There is a voice inside your soul that still remembers your purpose, even when your mind forgets. There is courage waiting just beneath your fear, waiting to be invited. I've sat with people who told me, I just don't have it in me, and watched as life proved them wrong. Not because their situation changed, but because their perception did. They began to speak to themselves differently. They began to believe in something beyond the mirror. They stopped looking outside for permission and started listening inside for instruction. And that is where transformation begins. You see, you don't become unstoppable by adding pressure or pretending to be strong. You become unstoppable the moment you realize you were built for more than survival. You were created for something holy, for growth, for impact, for quiet revolution in the lives around you. So don't wait for the world to validate your power. Don't wait for a mentor, a title, or a stage. The power is already within you. Not loud, not flashy, but steady and sure. And when you begin to trust it, even just a little, when you begin to act on it, even without proof, that's when the first quiet flame of the unstoppable life begins to burn. It's not about becoming someone else. It's about becoming who you were always meant to be. For so much of life, we are taught to look outward when things go wrong. We blame the economy. We point to our childhood. We cite a lack of opportunity, an unsupportive spouse, a toxic boss. And while those things may be real pain, real hardship, they are not the final reason we stop. No, the greater enemy often lives within. It's not the voice of the critic outside that holds us back. It's the whisper inside that says, you're not good enough. It's the silent doubt that creeps in after a mistake and says, maybe you're not made for this. It's the memory of the time you tried and failed and the conclusion you drew, I shouldn't try again. The real battle, my friend, is not out there in the world. It is within the mind, where our greatest victories or defeats are decided long before we act. I've known people who were given every opportunity, every advantage, and they crumbled. And I've known others who had nothing but hardship, yet rose like giants of the Spirit. The difference was never the external situation. The difference was what they chose to believe about themselves. You see, when you believe the lie that you're small, that you're unworthy, that you're alone, you begin to live small. You begin to shrink from life, from relationships, from possibilities. And slowly the world around you starts to match the world within you. But it doesn't have to stay that way. You can begin today to confront that false voice, not with shouting, but with truth. You can speak gently but firmly to the fear within you and say, "You may have lived here for years, but you do not own me." I believe there is something sacred in learning how to silence the storm inside before we ever face the storm outside. That is the work of the unstoppable, not just building skills, but building inner peace. A mind that refuses to tear itself down, a heart that knows where its strength comes from. And once that happens, once that shift takes root, everything changes. Because if you no longer need the world's permission, if you no longer allow self-doubt to speak louder than your purpose, then even the hardest day cannot stop you. So don't be too quick to fight what's out there. Instead, go inward, listen, heal, speak truth to yourself until it becomes louder than the lies. Because when your inner world becomes steady, no outer world can ever shake you. There's a certain kind of person you meet in life who seems to move with grace, even in struggle. They face obstacles, setbacks, silence, and yet something in them keeps rising. They aren't faster, they aren't louder, but they never seem to lose direction. That kind of person isn't fueled by adrenaline. They're not driven by applause. They move by purpose. Purpose is the secret fuel of those who cannot be stopped. It is the inner reason that outlasts outer resistance. When you are anchored in purpose, you no longer wake up asking, "Will this be easy?" Instead, you wake up and ask, "Is this worth it?" And if the answer is yes, even if it's hard, even if it's slow, you press on. I once met a man who had lost nearly everything, his business, his family, his health. He told me, "I thought I was finished." But one morning, I heard a voice inside whisper, "You still have something to give." And that was the spark. That voice became my reason. He didn't rebuild overnight, but step by step he began again, not for fame, not to prove anything, but because his life still had a purpose. That kind of purpose is what carries you when you're tired. It steadies your feet when the path is uncertain. It brings clarity in a noisy world that constantly tells you to chase more, post more, impress more. And it doesn't have to be some grand world-changing mission. Purpose can be quiet, it can be simple. Raising your children with love, writing that book you've held in your heart for years, starting a small project that brings healing to others, showing up every day with integrity in a job no one applauds. What matters is that it's yours, it's honest, it's anchored, and it reminds you why you're here. I've learned that those who chase success without purpose always burn out, but those who walk in purpose, even without success, feel fulfilled. Because success may fade, but purpose sustains. It gives meaning to suffering. It turns discipline into devotion. And it transforms ordinary days into sacred ground. So if you've been feeling lost, don't reach outward, reach inward. Ask, what was I born to give? Ask, what legacy do I want to leave? The answer doesn't need to be loud. It just needs to be true. And once you have it, protect it, nurture it, walk in it. Because a person with purpose is a person with direction, and a person with direction is truly unstoppable. Every unstoppable person you will ever meet has a backstory. And if you listen closely, that story almost always begins with pain. Not the kind of pain that ends quickly, but the kind that lingers, the kind that changes you. The heartbreak that shattered your sense of safety, the betrayal that made you question who to trust, the failure that made you wonder if you'd ever try again. Pain is universal, but what's not universal is what we do with it. Some people let pain define them. They carry it like a wound that never heals, a story that never grows. But others, and they are rare, take that same pain and they transform it. They let it shape them, deepen them, soften what was hardened, and strengthen what was weak. They allow their suffering to become sacred, That is the crossroads we all arrive at eventually. Will this pain break me, or will it build me? I remember speaking with a woman who had lost her husband in a sudden accident. Her life fell apart. She stopped working, stopped socializing, even stopped praying for a while. But then something changed. She began volunteering at a local shelter. She started listening to others who were grieving. And one day she said, "I still miss him, but helping others carry their pain has helped me carry mine." Her grief didn't go away, but it became useful. It became power. You see, pain, when surrendered, not denied, becomes a bridge to purpose. It cracks open the hard shell of ego and makes room for empathy. It removes the illusion of control and replaces it with compassion. And compassion is one of the most unstoppable forces in the world. So if you've been through something, if you're walking through it now, I want you to know this pain will not disqualify you. In fact, it may become the very soil where your greatest growth takes root. Don't waste it. Don't hide it. Let it teach you, stretch you, and then let it guide someone else home. You are not broken beyond use. You are being rebuilt from the inside out, and that rebuilding, that quiet resurrection, that's where your power is born. The world doesn't need perfect people. It needs people who have suffered and still love, who have fallen and still rise, who have scars and still believe. So take your pain, lift it toward heaven, and say, "Make this meaningful," because once pain has purpose, it no longer holds you back. It carries you forward. The world often celebrates the loud achievers, the ones who announce their goals, broadcast their progress, and stand on the mountaintop with hands raised high. But if you look more closely, the people who truly endure, who truly build, who truly become unstoppable, they often don't make much noise at all. They rise early when no one sees. They pray quietly before the world begins moving. They make small decisions that look ordinary, but done daily, they shape an extraordinary life. Discipline for them is not about punishment, it's about love. They do not wake up at dawn because they must, but because they know something sacred happens in the stillness before the world demands their attention. They don't turn down distractions to impress anyone. They do it because their purpose deserves focus. And you'll find these kinds of people walking slowly, never rushed, but somehow always arriving exactly where they're meant to be. You'll find them journaling instead of scrolling, reading instead of reacting, listening instead of performing. Their progress doesn't shout, it whispers and it compounds. I once met a teacher who had quietly mentored hundreds of students over 4 decades. No spotlight, no awards, just a deep daily commitment. He said to me, "The world forgot how powerful it is to simply show up and keep showing up." And that's it, really. Unstoppable people are not always gifted, not always brilliant, but they are consistent, they are faithful, they build the life they desire through thousands of quiet, unseen choices. And one day, after years of steady effort, the world calls them lucky, but luck had nothing to do with it. You don't need to impress anyone to live like this. You just need to stay close to your values, your faith, your reason. Let that guide your schedule. Let that shape your habits, because when you commit to small disciplines, your life takes on a strength that cannot be shaken by storms. You become steady, you become grounded, and in a noisy world of shortcuts and spectacle, that kind of quiet discipline, it's rare, it's holy, it's unstoppable. There is a kind of confidence that doesn't make a sound when it enters a room. It doesn't demand applause. It doesn't rush to defend itself. It simply is. It's not built on appearance or performance, and it doesn't come from the number of people watching. This confidence runs deeper. It's born not from ego, but from identity. So many people spend their lives chasing approval. They dress to be seen, speak to be admired, work to be accepted, And yet, even when they get what they think they wanted, it never quite feels like enough, because what they're chasing is not admiration, it's assurance. But here's the truth. Real confidence doesn't come from people. It doesn't come from power or position or praise. It comes from knowing deep within that you were created with care, that your worth is not up for debate. You are not here by accident. You are not less than anyone else. And you don't need to prove your existence through constant striving. I remember meeting a woman who had endured rejection after rejection in her career, but each time she walked into a new room, she did so with her head high, shoulders back, and spirit intact. I asked her one day, "How do you keep your confidence after so many closed doors?" She smiled and said, "Because I don't tie my value to how someone else sees me. I know who I am before I walk in." That's the kind of unshakable confidence I want for you, not the kind that grows with compliments and dies with criticism, but the kind that remains steady, even when you're overlooked, even when you're misunderstood, even when you're standing alone. Confidence isn't about having all the answers. It's about being anchored in who you are and whose you are. When you understand that your Creator placed something sacred within you, something that cannot be taken by failure or enhanced by applause, you begin to walk differently. You no longer chase rooms that don't respect your presence. You no longer over-explain your dreams to those who cannot see them. You move with peace, and peace, my friend, is power. So walk into this world with quiet assurance, not arrogance, not performance, but presence. Because when your confidence is rooted in truth, not trends, it cannot be shaken. And that kind of strength, that kind of quiet certainty, it makes you unstoppable. There are seasons in life when you'll look around and find no applause, no helping hand, no validation, no one saying, "You're doing great, keep going." And it is in that moment when the room goes quiet, when friends disappear, when family doubts, when even your closest ones say, "Are you sure?" that something sacred is revealed. That is where the journey becomes yours alone. Being unstoppable isn't proven when everyone is cheering. It's revealed when no one is. When you walk with your dream through a desert of silence, when you work on your vision while others sleep or scroll, when you hear doubts louder than encouragement, but you still take the next step. I remember speaking to a young man who wanted to start a small foundation in his city. Nothing fancy, just a way to feed children in neglected neighborhoods. He told me even my own brother told me it was a waste of time, that I should do something more realistic. And I asked him, "So why didn't you stop?" He looked me in the eye and said, "Because I wasn't waiting for him to believe in me. I already did. That's it. That's the turning point. The unstoppable don't wait to be believed in. They believe in the mission, even if no one else does. They believe in the voice they heard in the silence. They believe in the fire placed inside them by something greater than opinion." It's painful, yes, to feel alone in your pursuit, to pour your soul into something that others laugh at, or worse, ignore. But some of the most powerful legacies were built in that exact soil. You do not need mass approval to be called. You do not need likes or shares or consensus to be chosen. If your heart is stirred by something good, something true, something that helps or heals, walk in it, even alone. Because the truth is, many won't see your worth until your work bears fruit. They won't clap until the stage is built. They won't support until it's safe. But by then, you'll be too far ahead to need it. So let them doubt, let them misunderstand, let them call it foolish. And you keep building, you keep becoming, you keep believing, because faith in your God-given vision is the foundation of an unstoppable life. At the end of the day, becoming unstoppable is not about becoming perfect. It is not about pushing harder or never falling. It is about answering a quiet invitation, one that's been waiting inside your soul all along. It's the invitation to rise, not with noise, not with force, but with clarity, to rise from self-doubt, to rise from the voices that told you to stay small, to rise from the fear that says, "Who are you to try?" and answer back, "I am someone who was made for more." You don't need to become someone else to begin this journey. You don't need to wait for the perfect day, the right conditions, or someone else's blessing. What you need is already within you. The courage, the conviction, the quiet strength that does not shout but endures. Maybe life has worn you thin. Maybe you've started and stopped so many times that your hope feels tired. I understand that. But I want you to hear this clearly. The power to rise again is not gone. It is simply waiting to be chosen. And you choose it not by making a grand declaration, but by doing one small thing today, with faith, with intention, with love. You choose it when you forgive, when you begin again, when you take one more step after 100 setbacks, when you open your heart to the idea that maybe, just maybe, your best days are not behind you. Becoming unstoppable has little to do with noise and everything to do with depth. It's about walking closely with the truth of who you are. It's about honoring your calling, even if no one claps for it. It's about being a light in a world that has grown tired of pretending. So here, at the end of this message, let me remind you gently, you were made for this, not to impress, not to dominate, but to stand tall in your values, to lead with kindness, to persevere with purpose, to love deeply, even when the world tells you to harden. That's what it means to be unstoppable, not because you never break, but because you always rebuild. Not because you never fall, but because you never forget how to rise. And so today, rise quietly, boldly, faithfully, because the world may not be ready for the strength you carry, but it needs it now more than ever.